This is the Family Business Podcast. We're back once again, the favorite time of the month, Family Business Podcast, and we're answering one important question today. How do you do it all? And they make it so easy. Come on, we're joined with our friends, Pastors Harrison, Pastor Kristie Chokka from Kingdom Church. Let's go. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. I'm Brett. This is Desiree, and we're joined today by the legendary, wonderful, incredible.
Keep going.
Come on.
Pastor. He's like, say my name.
What else you got?
Keep it coming.
Pastors Harrison and Kristie Chokka, Kingdom Church, St. Albert, Canada. Alberta doesn't matter. But yeah, anyways, doesn't matter.
Listen, we ramped up and then you just came right
ramped
back.
it up,
That's
ramped
good.
it back down,
Okay.
crash and burn. But church planners, pastors, parents, incredible people, incredible leaders. And I've just got one very simple question. How do you do it all? How do you do all the things? 4 kids, twins are in the mix. Like 4 under 4, am I right?
4 and under. Yeah.
Right.
4 and under. Yeah.
Yeah. So very easy life.
Yeah.
Leading one of the fastest growing churches in the Edmonton area. Okay. So that's a thing. Family's a thing. How do you do it all? I mean, that's the question that I'm wondering, because I think all of us struggle with prioritization. How do we figure out what's important, what's not important, what's urgent, what's important? All those. I think I heard you preach a great message on this one time. How do we do that? How do we figure it out? How do we put those pieces together, especially in context of raising a family and actually loving them and being present and around, which I think you both do very, very well. I think, and that's why we wanted you on here to talk about this today. So I don't know who wants to start. It's a broad topic. Preparing. I just said the question is, how do you do it all? And I was being very serious. How do you do it all?
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's
You
good.
can start.
Okay. Great question.
Yeah.
So the first thing that comes to my mind is that we don't do it all because you cannot do it all.
There you
And
go.
so I think that what we've sort of figured out or tried to figure out is like what is the most important things. And then how do we then fit the most important things together rather than trying to do everything. So I'll speak for myself because I think that, we definitely have different routines in a sense. But for me, the biggest thing I've tried to figure out is like, what is the thing that if I don't do it, it can still go, right? And so I've heard the analogy, you guys have probably heard it too, about like rubber balls versus glass balls. So if you drop one, like what's going to bounce up like a rubber ball? If you drop one, what's glass and it'll break? And so for us, like pretty simply, like our kids would be the glass balls. We're like, no one else can do that. So if I drop it, as a dad, like no one else can replace me as dad. So that's probably the first thing that comes to my mind is like keeping those priorities straight to realize that I'm the only person that can be dad to these kids. I'm also, in a sense, I am, the lead pastor of our church. So there are certain things that are unique to me within the context of church, and then figuring out within the context of church, what are the things that anyone can do? Because I mean, I want to do a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that I like to do, but what can I do that, or I should say, what is something that someone else can do that I don't have to be a part of? That's kind of the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah. I think as you were talking, I think at the beginning of doing all of this, so our church is almost 6 years old, and like you said, we have 4 kids, 4 and under. And so in the past 6 years, a lot has happened. And I think at the very beginning of the process, I tried to like compartmentalize even the top priority things, marriage, motherhood, ministry. Like I'd try to compartmentalize
There
them.
you go.
The 3
Well
M's,
done.
the strong
Love it.
M's. And it didn't work. Like it doesn't work for me to be like in just a mom mode from the moment my kids wake up to the moment they go to sleep. And then like a ministry mode for like an hour and a half of like getting church stuff done. And then like an hour and a half of like marriage mode. So I think in the past couple of years, I've just realized that like it's okay for them to like bleed into each other and like for the barriers to kind of fall a little bit, because I was told some really good advice from Stephanie Iverson at the beginning of motherhood. And she just said that like ministry isn't just church for you. Like ministry is your whole life. And so the bleeding into each other would be like, if at church I'm trying to talk to somebody, but one of my kids needs me, like in that moment, the most important gospel to get across, like isn't shutting my 4-year-old down. It would be like getting down to her level, speaking into what she needs. And from that picture of me being a mom, like that's kind of my ministry. That's my picture of gospel in that moment. And so, yeah, just allowing them to kind of go into each other, that the marriage, the motherhood, the ministry, just allowing, the walls to kind of back up a little bit and for everything to be able to be together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious because, I mean, we have pastors and leaders and watch this, but we also have people who aren't working in vocational ministry, but like work jobs. And part of this is, let's talk about marriage. So what does this look like for you guys where communication is concerned?
Yeah.
So how
Why are you asking about this question?
I don't know.
Great.
I want to know though. I really want to know because I think everybody communicates different ways. I think the way that your schedule looks is different in different families, but also in different seasons. Yeah. So what has it looked like for you to figure out time together, but to communicate these things and to be on the same page with these things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to start? Do you want me to?
Sure. I mean, I'll start, and you can interject as you want. So we heard, I think, a really helpful analogy when it comes to marriage is like 3 different postures, which is face to face, which is like, you know, you're talking, you're communicating, all that good stuff, which is like, you know, a healthy part of marriage. Then there's side by side, which is like we're facing the world, we're doing things together. And then there's back to back, which is really like we're going into opposite directions. And so for us in these last 4 years with kids in specific, like we've definitely been side to side, right? And like we're doing life, we're doing ministry. I always make the joke that like especially when our kids are around, if we try to go face to face, like there is nothing that makes them more angry than when we talk to each other. So I think, you know, for us, like side by side is good. It's good to be on mission. It's good to go forward. But I think that if we're honest, like that's the posture that is most natural for us. Like go and conquer, take the world, do what you got to do. So I think there's been moments really where it's outside voices, other pastors, other parents, other people in ministry that kind of, at least for me, those reminders to be like, hey, I know you're conquering the world, but have you guys looked at each other lately? So that's the first thing. I can say some more, but you can interject.
Yeah. I think just like the unity of like, because we both have like an urgency in what we're doing. Like if I'm at home with the kids and he's at the church, it's not like a 9 to 5 thing. It's like, once again, everything kind of bleeds into each other. Yeah. So I think for us, a big thing is to like, we're on this adventure together, even though like on a day-to-day basis, we might be like dividing and conquering a little bit. It's like we're carrying the weight together. We're doing this together. Like we're doing parenthood together. We're doing marriage together. We're doing ministry together, even if we're not in proximity all the time. And so it's just like, sometimes when he gets home, I'm like, I know you just taught for 3 hours, but like, give me a recap. Give me a summary. Just like fill me in.
But on short what, though, right? It's short.
Quick. All I need is a quick recap. Sometimes I'm like a little more detail, please. And he's like, oh man, like I just talked for 3 hours on, like I'm sure at points you're like, I just talked for 3 hours on this. Do I really want to say it again? But I'm just like, together we're just like, okay, we're on this adventure together. And if there's not clarity in like what I did for 10 hours a day by myself and what he did for 10 hours a day, then it's just like a little bit, you're disunified. And so I think we work really hard. And I think it's important to work really hard just to like fill each other in on what happened throughout the day. And Yeah, there's sometimes just like a sense of like FOMO. So it's just like, fill me in on what happened.
You guys had a similar experience?
No, I don't know what you...
Never. No, I don't ever sit and say, so how did that go? How did this go? He's like,
I
don't
think it's
wanna
great. Or it didn't
For
go
sure.
well. Or
Yeah, that's usually what it is. Actually,
know,
it was good. And then silence.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, communication's hard.
Yeah.
And now the ironic thing is, so like I put Harrison in like my top list of communicators that I know on the planet.
Yeah, you do.
So if he can do a short synopsis, I feel like I can. But ironically, so that's
challenge accepted.
So the ironic part of our lives, right, in our jobs and like our calling, is that we talk for a living.
Yeah.
As a big part of our job, whether it's, and I think people think that like the truth is preaching is the smallest amount of talking that we do because it's a concentrated amount of time. It's all the other meetings with people, with team, counseling sessions, all those kind of things. And it can be hard to, once you've used up those words.
For sure. Yeah.
To share it. And but I also can acknowledge and recognize that creates a barrier. That if I'm not like trying to pull it out of myself, and sometimes I don't know about you, I find at times I don't even know what to say about it.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of just like, oh, it was good or it was not good, or because I just can't process. Okay. Question for the ladies. How much is enough? Like, like what are you actually looking for? Because I feel like every time you ask, like it's an Admiral Akbar, it's a trap situation. And I don't know how to answer because I'm like, did I say enough? Did I not say enough? So what is enough? Is there such thing as enough? What are you looking
Come
for?
on.
That's fair. I think part of it though is, I mean, I don't know that there is a perfect answer to it. I think part of it though is it's an invitation to conversation. It's a doorway to, so that I at least, if you start sharing something, have a vantage point or like a position for like, so maybe if I ask this question, then I'll be able to get something out of you if I'm looking for something. Right? So it's sort of an invitation more than anything to a conversation. That would be the way that I see it.
I totally agree with that. And I think you're right. Like, it's not like a cut or dry, like 10 details for every hour that you spoke, but it's like...
A guideline's nice, though. It's
an invitation, because I think a lot of times when it's like, man, you just spoke for 6 hours, and then it's like, you're trying to like pull, then I'm like, I'm just trying to pull a couple minutes out. It feels almost like an injustice, right? Like, okay, well, you can speak to them for 6 hours, but... like it's kind of a pulling. So, but it goes both ways because I so often see, especially like on social media, and I'm sure you guys have seen it too, this like, I mean, this is, I think I'm fine saying this, but this saying of like for moms, like we're all touched out, like physical touch wise, like I'm so touched out.
That's true.
Or, like your kids give you so much love on a daily basis, like whether they're telling you things, then it can be the same for us as women, right? Like, sorry, like that's off limits. Like we were all touched out. But then it's the same way, like actually no, like you were doing that with other people and that was like, I'm touched out, but my children, but like it's a whole different level when you get back into that marriage, right? It's like actually no, you've been sitting in an office for 8 hours with like, maybe no encouragement or no physical interactions, you know what I mean? So then it's just like
hopefully no physical interactions.
Even just like face-to-face conversation or encouragement, that kind of stuff. Keep those limits. So then it is meeting each other to be like, okay, this is a different space that we do need to provide for each other. Even if we have provided it for other people.
Totally. Okay, so then let's get super practical. We talked about we don't do it all because you can't do it all. What does that look like? So obviously, family's at the top of the list. And we would suggest that everyone puts marriage. Your marriage is actually at the top. The kids are not at the top. The marriage is at the top. How does that look like practically for you? How do you make those decisions? Because like you said, it is blended. We're both all in ministry families, like kids are in the other room sort of thing. Like this is just how it goes. But how do you do that? How do you rank it? How do you prioritize it? And then and has there ever been a time that you have disagreed on the ranking or the prioritization?
It's not loaded at all.
Good question.
People want the drama.
Yeah. Take it away.
That's how we get those views.
I mean, I think for me, the first thing would be that like you never do it perfectly, which is the truth in it. And I think that if your aim is perfection, like never make the wrong choice, never do the thing, you're going to be disappointed all the time. I think essentially for me, I just, I love the story of Jethro and Moses, where he's like, hey, to Moses, his father-in-law says like, hey, you gotta change how you're doing things. Because he has this line, he says, you're tired, but he also says the people who you're serving are getting tired because of how you're leading. And so I always say, if I try to stretch myself everywhere, it's not like I've got a high enough capacity that like I can do everything. I just won't do it well, right? So I'm always figuring out basically in ministry, what are the things that someone can do, the 80% rule, 80% as well as me, or in many cases, better than I can. And so it's figuring out what those things are and then letting them do it and not touching it. And then for me, it's more just a matter, not even a prioritizing. That's not my issue. My issue is just like, if I'm going to delegate it, then stay away from it, right? Like social media is one for me that like, I try to just delegate it, not touch. That's hard, right? Because when they're posting stuff and I'm like, I see some things, I'm like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, hey, I've made that decision that like, because
got to get out of the mix.
Yeah, and media takes time, right? So it's like, I know there are lots of people that can do it better than I can. So those, again, that would be just something that like, I'm not going to touch it because someone else can do it. And again, it's not cut and dry, but leaders on our teams, right? Like, so our team leaders, our high level leaders, I should say, like no one can speak into them like I can speak into them, right? And I don't think anyone should speak into them like I speak into our high end leaders. So that's who I'm going to prioritize. And then, everyone else, it's not to say I'll never take a meeting with you, but it's to say like, hey, I'm always looking out, who can I pass this kind of off to? And then again, with being a dad, with being a husband, I cannot pass that off, right? And I'm not passing off date night to someone else.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, no. Weird. So those are the things that just like, that kind of help in that sense. I don't know if that fully answers the question, but I don't know if you have any different thoughts and he asked about disagreements on priorities.
Do you have one that comes to your mind for that?
Not off the top of my head.
Kristie's got a list, so she's just wondering if you got one.
Pull it out.
Pull it out quick. No, I think I was going to say most of the, like we've had a lot of conversations because most of our growth has like come from a mistake or from doing something wrong. And so then we get to the point of like, whether it's like, okay, for the past month, we've had something every single evening. So like, how do we take a step back, realize, okay, like, we can't do something every single evening. And so I guess on a practical level, like we try to like all of our kids, like when it gets to Saturday, like they are so excited because they know like Saturday is going to be a day that like we spend together. And then, in the evenings, usually we're like, okay, how many evenings can we kind of have just to ourselves, prioritizing those things. But I think we had a conversation about 2 months ago about not wanting, there's moments right now where you look back and you're like, man, I wish I would have known this 10 years ago. Yeah. And so I think we've had the conversation a lot of times of like, there will be certain things in 10 years that we look back and are like, we wish we would have known that. But right now, like we need to do everything that we can possibly do to be the best pastors, to be the best parents, to be the best husbands and wives and whatever title you have, whatever role you have. And so, like surrounding ourselves with people that can speak into our situations right now so that in 10 to 15 years, we're not like, oh man, I wish we would have known how to raise these toddlers better, or I wish we would have known how to lead a 6-year-old church better. You know what I mean? So like just getting that wisdom and advice right now as much as possible. And sometimes that is like the prioritization of like, which is really hard for me, which maybe can go into the disagreement, but you decide that, of being like, okay, like our kids can maybe go to grandma's for one night while we take in a conference so that we can be better leaders, better moms and dads, better people right now, and not just know in 10 years what we wish we would have known now.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, if you want to go to a disagreement, it's not so much a disagreement. I think like, so what she was referencing in short was like this idea that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was kind of like a twofold thing for us. Number one, to be like what she just said, we don't want to look back and be like, oh, I wish I would have done more. But it's also a place of like grace to be like, at every season of our life, I want to just be confident that like, even if we made mistakes, we made them based on the knowledge we had in the moment. Right? So it's like, I would have, you know, we talk about when we were dating and like some of the stupid things that we did. And it's like, well, we had no mentors. We had no one that was ahead of us. So you don't know what you don't know. So that's kind of that thing. So when it comes to like, you know, young kids in ministry and even in the seat that we're in, a lot of times we find ourselves younger than a lot of people holding the same positions as us. So they're going to treat their personal growth or conferences or whatever different than we are because they'll have teenagers while we're going to have, you know, toddlers.
Totally.
So I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a disagreement at times, but it's figuring out like, hey, for us, we both place a high value on like our kids and raising them. But then what's the line of like prioritizing them at the expense of our personal growth, where like our personal growth is actually going to be the thing that's going to help us raise them well. So that's, and then I don't have a solution for it. That's
and
just
our marriage.
That's just a tension that we're trying to manage is like, we want to prioritize these things, but we also don't know what we don't know. So we need to like, you know, get into places, get into spaces, have conversations, things like that. So
that's really good. That's really good. I was just going to ask quickly because I'm curious, and I think this is probably more directed for you, Kristie, but for women, I can't speak for you guys, but for women, I think often we can feel like we're pulled in many, many different directions. I think a lot of us perhaps don't compartmentalize well. And so how have you navigated feeling pulled in so many different directions when it comes to ministry or your job for anyone watching, whether it's ministry or job, whatever it is, there's no distinction there between other than that, but and parenting, but also the expectations or what others are needing, but also your own dreams and plans or things that, you know, are on your heart to do. And just figuring out that juggle.
Trying to balance it. The call to do it all. It's a great question. I think it's a constant struggle, that one. Because it's just like, you see all of these calls that God has put on your life and you want to see them all as like working together. But I think at times you feel so pulled that they become like versus each other almost. So it's just like, they almost become like more of a burden than a blessing. And so I think the biggest thing that I've probably learned is just like finding what I am called to do. The one thing that I'm called to do that threads through them all almost. So it's just like, so it's not like, okay, I'm a mom here and like this is the calling on my life, and I'm a wife here and I'm a friend here and I'm a daughter here, whatever. It's like, what is the single thread? And I think like over time I've just had this conviction with like the help of Harrison and God and other people speaking into my life of like, I have the call to mother people. And so it's just like, it's not just in motherhood, because for a long time with the church, because it was kind of like Harrison did lead the direction of our lives with like ministry and starting a church. And so I did have this internal struggle of like, where do I fit? What is my role? Like, okay, I have these giftings, but how does this play out? So it's just been like, right now I have the role and the call on my life to mother. And so it's easy in motherhood because you just meet the needs of the people that you love, which are your children. And so even as a wife, sometimes you kind of have, you just kind of know like, what are the needs of my husband? How do I meet them? That is my call, and that's how I'm helping him. But in a church, it can seem different because there's so many different places that you can like serve in a church. But my call isn't to like spend one weekend in nursery and then lead a small group here. My call is to mother the church. And so I am to nurture them. I am to love them. I am to invest in them and speak into them. And just like motherhood and being a wife, like I'm to meet their needs with what God has placed within me. And so I think that's the easiest way to find like a single thread and just like pursue that calling above anything of like, okay, like, do I do worship or, you know, it's just like, just that overall mothering, that feminine nature that God has put in me to love and to nurture and to multiply and to, just be fruitful.
Yeah, bring life.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I mean, so the moral of the story is it's kind of impossible to do it all, but you can do a lot. And I think we underestimate what is possible when you kind of look at more of a both and life instead of putting it all into silos and going, I got to, make it to each one of these things. It's kind of all in. I'm reminded of a quote from Javen Chavez. He said just recently is you got to speed your ministry down to the speed of excellence. So like focusing in, but I think we could apply that to our lives. Because you can get running so fast that you're doing all these things. And if I think a lesson we could all maybe walk away with, and it's some of the underlying things that I'm hearing you say is that you make conscious decisions and then you just do those things and you do those things well. And then you make another conscious decision and then you do those things well. And there's a tension in that, right? There's always a tension in the both end. And ages and stages, it changes. Like our kids are a little bit older than yours, but not like crazy that much older than yours. But it's a different stage. Everett turned 12 yesterday. So that's like a whole new stage. And so then we're now in a different stage, but we can remember some of those moments. I remember specifically going to a conference. You talked about going to a conference and Des being like, I hate this, because it's like, you just feel like you can't be all in. You can't like who's going to balance this? How are we going to make it work?
For sure.
And so like just leaning in those moments, I think is gold. Tell us how we can find you on the internet. Where do you live on the internet?
I mean, the best place, like we have, social media, Harrison Chokka, Kristie Chokka. I'm not that active on there. So our church, kingdomchurch.ca.
Let's go.
Our YouTube page. That's where you'll actually see me going. And then occasionally on Instagram.
Any major statements you want to make or anything that you want to say today? No? Okay, good. That's great. We're not going to get the views on this one. No, that's not true. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys
for joining us, for being here. Thanks to the kids in the other room for hanging out. And we love you both. You need to go follow all these people on the internet. And I can't wait till you guys are here on a Sunday at some point. The only trick with that for all of us is but we all have someplace to be on a Sunday.
That is the challenge.
But we will remember to do this. This is the Family Business Podcast. I'm Brett. This is Desiree. Thanks for joining us.